Hello and welcome to another Mythology Monday with me, your host Alice Hanov. And this week we are going to talk about the Salem Witch Trials and how they relate to the head, the heart, and the heir in the world of Torian. Now, something important to be aware of is that there were more witch trials than just in Salem. It's not as if Salem was the only place that had witch trials. Lots of other places did. I've watched a lot of documentaries on it. They actually started in Europe and came over to the New World. So if anybody's from Salem, Massachusetts, congratulations, you are not responsible for the witch trials. Europe is, and then they sent their crazy people over here. So I have a really big I have a really big book here on the Salem witch trials specifically. I've read little bits of it and that, but not very much because, I mean, look at that monstrosity. It's huge, but I like having a reference for it and that. Yay. I bought a new book recently, which I'm hoping to read in October as part of my Halloween reads, and this is called A Break with Charity, a story about the Salem witch trials. And so I'm hoping to be able to read this because it's a little bit more manageable than that monstrosity with everything I have to do. But I'm really excited about it. I find the witch trials to be fascinating, and not because I enjoy the violence and that, but I find it fascinating the way that humans will turn on each other for such a random and mundane thing. And that's the truth about the witch trials. Obviously, nobody who was being tried was actually a witch. And it seems crazy to me that humans would not only turn on their own, but turn on the people who were the most understanding of herbs and things that actually would benefit the people. But in the majority, if you look at the witch trials, and I've watched a lot of documentaries, even though I haven't read that monster of a book yet, but a lot of the women who were pointed out as being witches were sort of like outcasts or were isolated and were often widows or just never married, and so were people that were easily disposable for the society at the time, which is a horrible thing to think about. And so a lot of times you were just being punished for being unpopular, which is terrifying to think of the fact that you were unpopular, so therefore you were marked as a witch. And the way they tested them was even worse. They had these horrible torturous things where they just threw you in water, and if you sunk, you were innocent, but then you drowned. And if you floated, clearly you were a witch, and then you got tortured because obviously you were a witch and you were either tortured or burned. So that's not such a nice part about it. But the idea of the Salem witches influenced my line of Salem. And the reason for it was, like, there were men who were part of the Salem witch trials as well. If you did not know, there were men who were charged as being witches as well. But the majority of the people put on trial were women. And so this is a time where women didn't have rights, women didn't have power. And even in today's world, women are not viewed exactly the same as men. And there are still countries where women do not have the same level of power. So the idea of making a sorcerer line of Salem appealed to me because I was taking the power away from people. And in the Salem line, the power goes to the women. So it means if you're a Salem sorcerer in the world of Torian and you're a woman, you're more inclined to have abilities in the power, and you're going to have better and stronger abilities than a male sorcerer would, which I really liked because, again, I'm taking one of those themes where the Salem witch trials were used to suppress women's rights and to push them down and to murder people didn't like, and I'm flipping it around and I'm giving those witches power. Now, unfortunately, some of the people or some of the sorcerers in my books who have the Salem powers are nasty people, but that's the same regardless of what sorcerer line you are, but also what part of the world you're in. There's always good and bad people in every part of life and every place you live. So it's accurate for the Salem witch trials, and it's accurate for my book as well. But just the idea of taking something that was used to put people down and to suppress women and hold them back, I flipped it on its head and given women the power in this situation, which was a delightful little change for me. Also because when people think of the Salem witch trials, they think about the burning of the witches, and that's a little bit odd because it wasn't the only way that they handled things, and from the documentaries I've seen, it wasn't even the most common one. So it seems that everyone just remembers the witch trials and remembers burning of witches and that because it's the most dramatic and it's what sticks in your head, which is why I took the Salem witch trials and made them to be the fire wielding people in my world. But I've always been fascinated with the things like witch trials, and I even remember the first book I had to read in school was The Witch of Blackberry Pond or something, Blackberry Pond, something like that. But I still remember the fact that it was a woman who had the ability to use plants and potions and like make potions to help people, and she was shunned by her community because they thought she was a witch. And so it's something that's been happening throughout history, and I like taking things that look at things in one way and flipping it on its head in my mythology and in my writing. I did the same with the monsters, I did the same with the Arthurian legends. That's why King Arthur is the horrible guy, and yet, you know, the more powerful people are a little bit different than they are typically in the stories, and so I just like doing that. And the Salem Witch Trials was another place that I had the opportunity to do that. So if you've got any questions about why I picked the Salem Witch Trials or anything like that, or you want me to tell you the documentaries I've watched so you can check them out, leave me a comment and I will let you know. But otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic Monday. I hope you learned something, and yeah, happy reading.